And we're back here at the Kenya International Sports Film Festival 2020, the virtual edition. That was a very nice movie, Charm. And now we're going to the panel of sports in Africa and related to governance. Yes, I know many of you have been waiting for this panel for various reasons. And we are very fortunate with us to have among the panelists a lady from Nigeria by the name of Beverly Agbakoba. Beverly is she's a Nigerian regulatory and compliance lawyer. She's also a panelist in neutrals at Lagos Multi-Door Court and the Lagos Court of Arbitration. She is the head of the Sports, Entertainment and Tech practice at Olisa Agbakoba Legal and a member of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, NESG, Sports Thematic Industry Group on Alternative Dispute Resolution and Youth Policy Development. Then we also have from the United Kingdom, Dev Kumar. We met Dev yesterday. He was the panel moderator on the panel about arbitration and the growth of arbitration in Africa and sports. And Dev is an internationally experienced sports lawyer and academic with experience as a football intermediary. He has been instructed on contentious matters before FIFA, FIFA, and TAS, CES, ranging from disputes over training compensation to complaints against federations, and is an active member of the Association Internationale des Avocats du Football, AIAF. I hope I said that correctly, Dev. Then we also have from Nairobi, Kenya, Paul Ochieng, who is the Dean of Students, Strathmore University. He's also the Executive Secretary of Football Clubs Licensing Body of Kenya, working under the supervision of CAF and FKF. He has 23 years experience in senior level management, 15 of which involve sports management. And he is chairman of the Rio 2016 Olympics Probe Committee, which is another story for another day, another forum. But here at the Kenya National Sports Film Festival 2020, we are pleased to invite our panel moderator for this panel on sports in Africa and related governance. His name is Mr. Kihara Muruthi, and he is a partner in the law firm of Kihara and Wynn Advocates, a chartered arbitrator, accredited mediator, governance auditor, and corporate governance expert. Please welcome Mr. Kihara Muruthi, sir.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this session. Welcome to this session of sports in Africa and related governance. And I'm very excited. I know within the time that we have been given, we shall be able to hear from this panel with a wealth of experience. And I'm sure by the end of this session, we shall learn a lot about governance. You know, traditionally, everybody has always linked good governance to business and commercial activities. But here we are today. We are going to talk sports governance. And I think to take us off, I have a quote here from South African Minister of Sports and Recreation. This statement he made is what we are going to be really trying to digest. He said, and he told the media this, that the current state of affairs in the national federations is characterized by infighting and lack of unity. And I believe that is a replica. That is something that is happening not only in Africa, the world over when it comes to sports. Because previously, sports was more, there's been a shift from, in terms of the management of sports, there's a shift from amateur to professionalism. We are looking at professionalism today. We want to see what is really ailing sports management in Africa. There's a focus in Africa, but I'm sure whatever is ailing in Africa is a replica of what is going around the world. Maybe to start us off, Beverly, you are we have been told you're a regulatory and compliance lawyer.
Yes.
What is the current state of sports federations and organizations in Nigeria?
Okay, thank you first of all for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Okay, as far as the state of federations go in Nigeria, there has been a renaissance in the sense that there is a recognition that things need to change and that things can no longer continue as they have been.
Yes.
In the past, we had the glory days in the 70s under a general called Ogbemudia, who really taught sports, the glory of sports in schools, in universities. But we saw the decay and rot seep in around the 80s. So now the Federal Ministry of Youth and Sports, the state sports commissions all recognize, sorry for that, they all recognize that there is a need to restructure. Reason is because we have to address sports focuses a lot on the grassroots. And by and large, there's been a bit of a lack of organization around grassroots sports. So you find some states are more advanced than others. So that there's a lack of uniformity. So states like where I live, Lagos, tends to be a little bit more ahead. There's a little bit more structure. Same goes with Edo State, which is where you get all the famous runners like Okagbara and things like that. And then you go to other states in the country and there's nothing going on, no doubt due to insecurity and things like that. So there is that recognition that things need to be arranged and restructured. So we're still kind of trying to get our ducks in a row. More is happening in Lagos State, admittedly, and that's kind of where I feel there's a problem. We don't want a situation where you are at a disadvantage because of the part of the country you live in. So we really need to move in a more uniform direction where anybody in the country, it doesn't matter where you live, whether you're in Lagos or you're in Kaduna or Kafanchan or Abuja, there is equal opportunities, and that is the problem we're still suffering from. There's such inequality in terms of the structure that we have on ground, and also expertise. Expertise is lacking. We don't have the right people at board level. It's going to sound a little bit controversial, but it's the truth, because if we had more people in the right positions, we would be better than we already are.
Yes, Beverly, what expertise are you saying is really lacking in the management of these federations and institutions in Nigeria?
Exactly. We're here talking about sports administration. It's a skill. It's a skill set. You know, I think the problem we have in my part of the world is they feel that once you love sports, unquote, you're a sports lover. That's all. And it's a lot more than that. You need management skills. You need administration skills. You definitely need organizational skills. You need decision-making, leadership skills. So many things go into this mix of sports management. It's not just about, oh, I love sports so much. And it's a lot more than that. And that's where we need to take this to. We need to move away from treating this as a little hobby to actually the professionalization, as you pointed out. We need to professionalize the game so we can reap the benefits. Right now, we're not reaping as much as we could possibly be reaping.
Very well, very well. Thank you very much, Beverly. Now, Dev, what is the situation in the UK? And please try to bring a nexus for us. We are talking corporate governance today. You have been practicing as a dispute resolver in the sports arena. Is there a link between these disputes that I know the graph is rising up? Is there a link between these disputes and good or bad corporate governance? And please let us know how the management of sports organization generally is in the UK. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Kihara. And first of all, again, I thank KISFF for the invitation, and it's a pleasure to sit on this panel with my friends Beverly and Paul. In relation to the UK, the current situation over here, of course, I'll try and give you as much insight as I possibly can from my experience. and also to try and relate it to what I and our company have experienced in Africa. Now, I think there is absolutely a link between poor governance and the rise in issues that go to dispute, that need dispute resolution mechanisms. But that's not the only link. There are many issues and many challenges that arise, and I agree with a lot of what Beverly was highlighting, is that ultimately there's still a skills deficit, even in the UK, and there's a big drive with regards to sports governance at the moment. It's been going on for the last couple of years, and things are generally going in the right direction. But the drive is in relation to getting more of the in inverted commas right personalities on boards. And when I say right personalities, it's bringing diversity, experience, culture, to be able to cater for a wider range of persons and for a larger space of the society. Ultimately, governance is a moving thing. It's not something that is structured or rigid. It's got to have a degree of malleability to be able to adapt to times. And the challenge we're going through in the UK at the moment is that, yes, governance has been quite prominent. Generally, the top end organizations run quite well. They may be controversial for whatever reason. But generally the federations and the sporting bodies run quite well. However, they need to evolve and move with the times. So in one sense, whilst we're at two different stages with regards to what we see in the UK and what we might see in Africa or in Asia or in South America, the challenge is still the same. There is a skills deficit with regards to what we've got now, and we need to get more of the right people on board to be able to cater for what's coming up next.
Yeah, thank you, Dev. Thank you, Dev. Of course, I get Dev and Beverly. You have emphasized the fact that there is lack of skills within the management of these organizations. Let's hear from Paul Ochieng, who is he's a dean at Strathmore University here in Kenya. Paul, you have heard what Dev and Beverly are talking about. They have emphasized the fact that there is lack of proper skills up there. We have the Sports Act in this country, and a number of countries, and I think Nigeria, you have come up with some statutes. I thought these statutes were to bring in expertise and try to, through the state, try to manage or enhance good governance in these institutions. Has our Sports Act achieved that? Why does it appear that in Kenya here, we appear to have the same problems, irrespective of the fact that we enacted the Sports Act, which has really tried to manage and streamline these institutions? And because you are in the academic arena, please point out and tell us what skills do you think, do you think we should have some curriculum in schools where we can get this expertise, or can anybody who has done an MBA sit and manage these boards?
Thank you very much for having me in this panel discussion. And it's a very, very pertinent topic for us in Africa, yes, because I think there's one thing that is still lacking in sports: the full appreciation of the magnitude of we are handling as sports practitioners. Why do I say that? The threshold or the bar in sports management is so low. You look at the amount of money we manage as sports administrators per year. It's a lot of money that if we were to manage that amount of money in the corporate world, this is what I'm saying, in the business world as such, the level of qualification would be very, very high. So I can't agree anymore with my two colleagues here on that aspect of competence, because one thing we've lacked in sports management is to match our passion which I think Dave and Beverly have hinted on, and competence. We select people mostly on their passion for the sport or for sports, but we forget that passion on its own cannot manage a sport. We are handling types of money and resources that if anybody else was to manage, they would be required to have very high qualifications. Yes. Now, to the point you've just mentioned about we have a sports act that was brought in some years back. Yes. Why haven't we made the strides we were expecting to make? Yes. Now, as we all know, laws on their own, without goodwill, without a push from the people themselves in office, mean nothing. Because we still have wrangles in our elections. We still choose people as if it was a popularity contest, as opposed to, is this person coming to manage $1 million? Does he have the requisite skills? Mm-hmm. So first and foremost, we appreciate the magnitude of what we are doing. And secondly, we need to look at what is role in this thing that we are doing called sports management. Mm-hmm. The most central thing in sports is the athlete. We forget about the athlete. And that is why you find in basic things of corporate governance. You see, so we lack in that because we are not appreciating that the central thing in this sports governance issue is the person. And then finally, if we look at our whole continent, we look at sports as a recreational volunteer thing. Yes. 90% of sports administrators in this continent are volunteers. Yes. Truth be told, there's only so much you can expect from a volunteer because they have to raise money for upkeep through other means. Yes. So you will not have them giving you 100% of their time. Yes. So until we start looking at sports as something that requires full-time management, the way it's done in other continents, yes, African teams will always be reaching group stages, being knocked out. If we go very far, we'll be quarterfinals. So I think professionalizing the whole thing, looking at it like any other business would be very, very important. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paul. But Paul, before I let you go, you have said we have this act. There is nothing much that has happened between then and now. My question to you is, do you think government is doing too little? Because I note that government, and I'll come to you, Beverly, because I also need to hear from you about this. Do you think government is doing too little? Government appears to have stepped back. Government is regulating other organizations, but when it comes to sports, government tends to stand back. Do you think government should have some little bit more control in terms of managing the regulatory aspects of these organizations, Paul?
Okay, very well. I think I had a small glitch on the net, but I think I had the gist of your question. Yes. First, just to put it clear, yes, there has been progress from the time the Act was enacted in 2010. Yes. I was involved in training of federations in the country for a period of 4 years. I got some funding from the Dutch Embassy in Nairobi, and I trained the local federations for a period of 4 years. Yes. And a lot has happened because if you look at the positive things, first of all, now at least we have federations with constitutions. Very well. Before, sports clubs and federations were the registrar of societies, where you find everything ranging from political parties to village sports teams. But now we have a registrar of sports. Yes. Now we have a requirement that for you to be funded by government, you need to have met some basic criteria of governance. Okay, yes, it's basic criteria, but at least it suffices. Yes. To your main question, yes, has government stepped back from this? Yes. I would say yes and no. Yes, because again, they need to give us that right to self-determination. Mm-hmm. You see, again, if government starts putting its fingers in each and every source in this country, you'll end up not having anything for people to develop on. So there has been that challenge where people have been saying, since our leaders cannot take us to the promised land in terms of sports, can government come and take back the reins of control? Yes. I wouldn't go for that. Okay. I would go for the fact that we stick to creating a conducive environment for leadership. Now, until we see people prosecuted for corruption in sports, until we see, people spending time in jail for corruption in sports, they always think that because sports is just a societal recreational activity, there's nowhere I'll be taken. So I think we just need to push a bit on how we deal with criminals in sports, how we deal with people who misappropriate funds in sports, and I think that will serve as a deterrent to people misbehaving in sports.
Okay, thank you so much, Paul. Beverly, you've heard what Paul has just said. I'm really concerned about government being trying to manage or assist these organizations vis-a-vis government stepping back and letting these organizations sort out their own mess. Because the reason I'm saying this, probably here, if you try to read, you'll see we have our cricket board here, and you will Cricket Kenya, and you will find that there has been problems. We can see them. Anybody who is not a sports fan, it's in the newspaper every day. They are in this court, they are in this tribunal. Nothing seems to be working. So should government come in to resolve some of these things, or should we remain traditionally the way we are and say, look, that is them, that is sports, they will sort out their problem? Yes, Beverly.
Okay. I really agree with what my colleague, the points he made concerning government intervention. I really don't feel that I think government has a limited role to play when it comes to sport.
Yes.
The real engine of the sports industry now is being driven by the private sector.
Yeah.
I think what government can do is, because we can't say government should step back completely, no.
Exactly.
We need them as far as creating that enabling environment. Give us a framework for alternative dispute resolution. I must say, Kenya has gone ahead in terms of that. Having that sports tribunal is a very big step, and it's recognized by the Constitution. We need to have favorable tax policies, which will perhaps give tax holidays for people investing in sport to encourage not just foreign investment, but to encourage local investors. You know, I think government has that role to play in terms of creating that framework to make sports appealing as an investment destination. Then you allow private sector to drive. Because it's the same with, like, when you look at other disciplines like fintech and all, they're being driven by the creativity and the innovation of the young people. They have all the ideas, the brains, but government plays a sort of, I would say, mothering role by making sure, okay, you don't cheat your investors. You have to play it by the rules, play fair, right? So I think government does have a role to play as far as making that level playing field fair, transparent. But the real engine driver will be the private sector. So private sector will drive infrastructure. If you're talking about huge infrastructure, then PPPs can come in, say a foreign league wants to come into the country. I think I saw yesterday in the news, Harare have just signed with La Liga to set up Betis Academy. And, you know, those are the kind of things we want to see more of. Now, it's another question talking about too much foreign influence coming in and dominating the scene. That's another thing. But at least as far as, you know, let it be attractive enough for people to even want to set up clubs, to set up sports training institutions, and so on. So we need government to create that framework. Here in Nigeria, I've been working as part of the NESG to come up with the plans for a national sports court. So we look at other jurisdictions, we look at what they have, what works, what doesn't work. And then we present it to the ministry and we say, this is what we think can work here. Because if you have a good dispute resolution framework whereby people can seek quick redress in a fair manner, then you will attract more investment. So we cannot do without government at all. Both sides have to play in a balanced fashion. So private cannot overtake too much, and government cannot impose too much. Just a nice balance. So that's kind of my opinion.
Now, on the issue of a sports court, as you may call it, I think we're a little step ahead of you because we came up with a sports tribunal. And this sports tribunal is manned by members who have a link or who have experience, who understand matters sport. But you know what happens sometimes, there was a floodgate, and right now I think they have a lot of cases because, you know, previously nobody was comfortable going to the normal courts because maybe they did not understand the issues in federations. So this court, of course, all of a sudden there are all these cases you know, from the various federations, and of course it's clogged up, but it's a good thing. It's a positive thing because that is the right forum for resolving these disputes. Now, Dev, I can see you have handled some disputes in the CAS, TAS, and I can see some of them are disputes that have a nexus or one of the parties are the federations. Is there a link also between those disputes? I'll ask you two questions. Is there a link between those disputes and governance? And secondly, was there a mechanism where, and I believe even Beverly, that's what you should be looking at as you draft your act, is there a mechanism where these federations first could attempt some mediation or some ADR, alternative dispute resolution, before you go to the apex court? Please, Dev.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Kihara. As I'm sure you'll appreciate, and everyone will appreciate, I can't go into specific details about the cases, particularly because several of them are live at the moment. However, I can try and give you some general ideas. Yes, in relation to matters that we've had go to CAS and which have involved federations, and one that is live at the moment that does involve a federation. There have been elements in question in relation to the governance.
Yes.
This is something that is prevalent, is there, it's visible. As lawyers, of course, there are elements that we are challenging within the courtroom. But overall, yes, if we look at it from a holistic perspective, there are issues of governance there that may have given rise to the dispute forming. Now, in relation to sort of pre-action protocols, if one can put it that way, or methods or mechanisms to try and stop the situation escalating, there are often, in my experience, within federations, mechanisms to try and dissolve situations before they do escalate. The question that we've got to pose is, how effective are these mechanisms? Now, what we'll all tend to find whenever we see statutes, and for example, Kihara, you were saying earlier, and I think Paul also mentioned it, that one of the good things now is that federations do have statutes, whereas a short while ago, they didn't. And if we look at it historically, there's been a big shift from the amateur to the professional only in the last generation. We were still focusing on the basic Corinthian principles of sport. You know, the principles of fair play and discipline and being fit for defense. And now it's changed into a private sector driven multi-million or multi-trillion dollar industry. So you know, it's great that we do have these documents in place, but a lot of these documents have got mechanisms on paper, not mechanisms that have real efficacy in reality. So you might read something like, prior to going to a dispute, the parties in question will use all best endeavors to try and resolve the dispute within 14 days. But that doesn't actually mean anything. It doesn't mean anything at all. You know, it's not worth the paper it's written on. So ultimately, a lot of these situations would end up going to a dispute in any case. So yes, there are mechanisms on paper, but how effective these mechanisms are, how detailed they are, and how much practical impact they actually have is something that is a different story in entirety.
Okay. I hear you. Thank you so much, Dev. Now I think we can go to Paul. Paul, Paul, you can hear me? Paul is in academia. I don't know whether I lost him. Paul, are you there? Beverly, are you with us? I think they seem to have... oh, they're back. Paul, you're back? Good. We thought
very much.
Now, Paul.
Yes.
You are in academia. You did mention that at one time you were engaged and you were trying to assist or train these federations. Now, what comes to my mind is you recall the time there were these multinational corporations, commercial corporations that had severe governance challenges. After that, what happened to most governments? They started putting a lot of emphasis on corporate governance, good governance, if I may call it. And these codes have found themselves in almost every statute that touches on governance or management of commercial organizations. Where are we in Africa in terms of coming up with these codes? Because these codes are probably what we really need. I know probably Dev will tell us what they have there, but where are we in terms of embedding these codes within these organizations, such that in normal commercial organizations, you are told if you do not put up this structure according to this code, then you don't get this. Where are we? Because that might be the solution. I don't know, but tell us.
Thank you very much for that. I'll pick up from what Beverly and Dev have said.
Yes.
Because the people to crack the whip are the main stakeholders in sports, which is the private sector and the government sector. Now, whenever the private sector gives conditions for funding of a specific event or sport, we always see the federation involved towing the line immediately. Yes. Because, as you know, sports majorly operates on sponsorship all over the world. Yes. And the sponsors have a very big say on what happens in sports. So first and foremost, the current big sponsor in sports, government also, because if you look at it, in Africa, 90% of sports venues are owned by government. Look at our case in Kenya. I mean, there are very few top-notch sports facilities owned by the private sector. Half of them are government-owned. Yes. So it is about the two stakeholders, the private sector that normally funds most of our events, the government that provides the ambience and the environment for sports, yes, the whip. We've seen they've cracked the whip. If it was not for government cracking the whip, that unless as a federation you have put your constitution, your statutes in order, we will not fund you for any international qualifier or tournament. Yes. And we've seen federations towing the line. Mm-hmm. So I must say that there's been a lot of progress. I mean, a lot of progress has taken place, because I'd like us to give an example that happened recently. I guess a number of us here watched Cameroon in the Italia 90 World Cup. Yes. And that team performed so well. And if you remember, their captain died a couple of months ago. Mm-hmm. At that time, they were promised houses for each and every one of them. Mm-hmm. However, the corruption in football at that time was so much that the president then, who's still the president now, stopped the construction of those houses because they were inflated. 30 years down the line, the houses have been completed. It's unfortunate the captain of that team could not live in that house because he died shortly before the houses were handed over. But the point I'm putting across is that we've come a long way, and now we are beginning to see the fruits. So for me, it would be about the private sector and the government sector continuing to crack the whip. Then finally, to dovetail on what Dev has just said, which is very important.
Yes.
Sports for a long time has been run as a social activity. Yes. And that has denied us top-notch management skills, because it has always been seen as a friendly thing, something that is not that serious. But over time,
Yes.
we've realized that unless we do good management structures,
Yes.
unless we manage these resources very well,
Yes.
the corporates might give up on us and take their money elsewhere.
Yes.
So I think as time is progressing, we've seen people coming into sport in a more serious way. And over time now, we have sports economists like me, we have got sports lawyers like Beverly and Dev here. We are getting serious management principles being applied in sports. So I think we might be old as, as an activity, that is sports.
Yes.
But professional management in sports is less than 50 years old.
Yes.
That is not an excuse because technology came in recently and is much better managed. But these are the teething problems which I think, given time and steady steps, we will make it. Because our SDTs, this is the dispute tribunals.
Yes.
If you look at it, in Africa, no country has an SDT that is more than a decade old.
Yeah.
In law, in terms of life, that's a very short period. I think with steady steps, we will make it.
Thank you very much, Paul. Now, I really wish I had more time. Maybe if we had a day or so, we can go on and on these issues. But parting shot, what do we need to do to focus in terms of enhancing good corporate governance in sports in Africa? Beverly, in 1 minute.
My goodness. Okay. Like my colleague said, Paul, let's crack the whip. Capital is the bloodline of sports. So you need to get them where it hurts. Enforce better principles through funding. If you want money to do your sports activities, then corporates need to insist on evidence of sports governance. If you enforce these things, then they are more likely to imbibe it and implement it. But if you just give the money as it is, without any, without any standards, without any evidence of standards in place, then things will continue as they are. So we need to crack the whip. Corporates have a role to play. Government has a role to play. Private sector. We all need to enforce good governance.
Thank you.
Thank
you, Beverly. Dev, 1 minute or less. What do you think we need to focus in Africa in terms of enhancing good corporate governance in sports?
I think I agree with a lot of what Beverly said. Now, my friend Dr. Donald Bukare, who was a guest on the show yesterday as well, he and I have a little bit of a debate with regards to the pertinence of governance and good governance. A lot of speakers on the subject don't believe in the concept of good governance. I do. So I'll step away from that for a moment and let's just focus on the sufficiency, which is governance. Now, I think there's a linear plan here. If we can crack the whip and we can get the government or the governments involved in setting a standard, ultimately that will hopefully enable the federations to get themselves up to a sufficient level where they can start working effectively governing well, not going into good governance principles because that's a different story, but just governing at a standard level builds consumer, colleague, and stakeholder trust. And when you generate that goodwill, when you run something properly, people want to buy into it and identify it. And that's where the privates come in. And ultimately, this is what I need to, I need, in my view, I need to see a lot of countries and a lot of entities in Africa or entities outside of Europe do a lot more. And hopefully this will happen in the near future.
Yes. Thank you very much. And lastly, Paul, what do you want the viewers to take home in terms of what do you propose that we should do in terms of enhancing governance in Africa? In 1 minute.
For me, appreciating what Africa has, I would like to look at two things. Number one, we should not relent on asking for good structures for sports governance. There is the entrusted to us sports practitioners are massive and we cannot manage them in an amateur style. Secondly, to go to the point that all of us said at the very beginning, we need competence. Competence. We need leaders who are competent. We need to match their passion with competence. We can't have sports position be given on the basis of tokenism. Those two are my takeaway for my audience. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Dev, and thank you, Beverly, for having me. I believe we have done a wonderful job,
you,
and I believe our viewers have something to take home within that short time. Thank you so much, and God bless you. And see you. Hope to meet you sometime soon. And Beverly, Beverly is writing a book in sports governance. I'll be happy to get a copy. Everybody has had that. I want a copy of that book. Thank you very
prefer
much.
a signed copy, in fact.
Yes, we did that copy.
I need a signed copy too. See you guys.
Those are 3 copies. Those are 3 copies.
Thank you all, guys.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you, viewers, for having me for this 40 minutes that I've engaged my viewers. And well, Chris, I'll just ask you to come and thank you very much.
Make that 4 copies. That is a very, very, very exhausting and detailed topic. And it's something that keeps on coming up year after year after year. And are we making any progress?
We are. We are talking about sports governance now. 10 years ago, we were not talking about sports governance. Talking about it is progress.
Exactly. Thank you so much for that, Mr. Kihara Muruthi.
Yes.
And one thing that we strive to do here at Kenya International Sports Film Festival is, aside from, you know, entertain people with the movies and inform them of certain issues, and also basically have these panels on various issues of sports, is we also believe in educating the public.
That is true. Actually, as we were going through this, and I think I'm going to engage my brother Paul. You know, we're talking about competence and competence and competence.
Which is part of the curriculum.
What I like about KISFF is doing is that a lot of these discussions we are having, you know, we are now starting to have these courses in sports management and all that. A lot of these sessions we have had, I hope the youth will be able to benefit from these discussions. Because they'll be able to pick a lot. And that is why I'm saying we are heading somewhere. We are improving, we are learning, we are giving information to the youth. The ones who will come and manage this organization, we are going somewhere.
Thank you. And with that...